Welcome to Hebrew 101. Even if language isn't your thing, listen for just a few minutes as we discuss the word chesed. Say it with me. Chesed. Chesed. Get real guttural with it. It's kind of phlegmy to say, which makes it kind of fun. Give me a like if you've ever heard this word chesed before. And if you haven't, then you definitely owe me a subscribe. Because in this channel, we're always trying to show you something fresh and new about the Bible. One of the reasons I love the Hebrew language and will be using a Jewish study Bible for all of my references today is because each Hebrew word has a story or a narrative behind it. I like to say that each Hebrew word paints a picture. So, Chesed is this really cool word that means no way out kind of love. A kind of love that has a commitment to it and doesn't need and won't look for a reason to leave. And it isn't waiting for you to drop the ball so that the relationship can be terminated. Do you have that Chesed kind of love with anyone in your life? A friendship so deep that there's no way you would bail on them? A sibling that you honor in such a way that they would support and believe you no matter what? What about with the Lord? Have you had the realization that He already loves you with this Chesed kind of love? He's not looking for a way out. He's not waiting for you to screw up so badly that He has a legit reason to ditch you. He already knows the sins you will commit, and He's not scared to offer you His Chesed love. So why wouldn't you take it? In this video, we're going to look at the story of Ruth through the lens of this Chesed love. We're going to talk about Chesed love found in the story, really a storybook. And stick around to the end, because I'm going to share with you how this love relates to your faith. And as always, there are chapters down below. The story of Ruth in the Old Testament is an emotional story of two women who, after being completely emptied of everything in their life, were shown this Chesed love by each other and by a family redeemer, and they found themselves to be full in the end. Let's look at the book of Ruth, chapter 1, verse 1. It starts out with, back in the day when judges were judging, which in our modern day world reminds me of the infamous saying, you do you. Even though judges were judging, everyone ignored them, and they had no authority. We are told in Judges 21:25, there was no king in Israel. A man simply did whatever he thought was right. Sounds a lot like you do you, right? You do whatever makes you happy, regardless of the consequences. And this is the culture that we find Ruth and Naomi in when we first meet them. Ruth is a Moabite, not raised to believe in Yahweh, and after her father-in-law, her brother-in-law, and her husband die, she is told by Naomi, you do you. Naomi tells her, go back to your family in Moab and do whatever makes you happy. However, Ruth has become a part of Naomi's family, a family originally from Bethlehem, who follows the way of Adonai. She has been around her mother-in-law, Naomi, long enough to notice that Naomi speaks of Adonai often, and that doing what makes you happy isn't the life she wants anymore. She wants to experience this Chesed love that Naomi has spoken over her before. And she even mentions it when she tries to convince her to go home to Moab. In Ruth chapter 1, verse 8, Naomi says to Ruth, may Adonai show you Chesed as you did to those who died and to me. Ruth not only stays with Naomi, but she makes this vow to her. You may have heard these words used in a wedding before, but it was originally used between a daughter-in-law who has decided that she wants a life with Yahweh. She wants His Chesed love, and she doesn't want a way out from this bond between her mother-in-law and from her mother-in-law's God. Listen to what she says and see if you hear how Ruth declares her acceptance of God's Chesed love for her. In Ruth 1, 16 through 17, she says, don't press me to leave you and stop following you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May Adonai bring terrible curses on me, and worse ones as well, if anything but death separates you and me. Did you catch it? Ruth tells Naomi, your God will be my God, and she means it. She understands that by serving Yahweh, she is the recipient of His Chesed love, and that she no longer lives under the motto of you do you. The best part of Ruth's conversion story is that she not only receives this Chesed love, she gives it as well. The rest of the book of Ruth highlights how she begins to take care of Naomi, and she puts herself in many humble situations to provide for her. When we, Mr. Harvell and I, were living in Israel as a part of an archaeology dig, we would often comment on how the fields were all square, but the wheat was harvested by a machine in a spiral shape, so all the corners were left untouched. This ancient practice of leaving the corners of your field unharvested is how the Jews took care of those less fortunate. They were allowed to gather what was left, and this very practice is how Ruth provided food for Naomi. In fact, while she was out gleaning wheat in Boaz's field, he told her, "I've heard the whole story, everything you've done for your mother-in-law since your husband died, including how you left your father and mother and the land you were born in to come to a people about whom you knew nothing beforehand." In Ruth 2:11 and later in Ruth 3:11, Boaz also says, "All of the city leaders among my people know that you are a woman of good character." Do you see how Ruth allowed the Chesed love she accepted from God to overflow in her own life? So much so that the city leaders knew and were impressed by her actions. And even though she was just a peasant, a foreigner, a girl who couldn't offer anyone anything, to Boaz, she was worthy of praise because he saw the commitment she made to love her mother-in-law with a no way out, not looking for a reason to leave kind of love. Boaz was a wealthy man who would eventually redeem her and offer her protection and a life where she would never want for anything again. In that culture, he was referred to as a family redeemer, which means he was to rescue Ruth and Naomi and provide for them and their offspring. It's no surprise that I can 100% relate to Ruth, and I bet you can too. I was once a stranger to God, and in my household, I was allowed to live by the motto, "You do you." I did things that made me happy, that would allow me to have success, and would give me temporary satisfaction. But one weekend in high school, I went to a winter weekend with a friend who had invited me to church many times before, but at this winter weekend, I met a family redeemer too, and his name is Jesus. I had nothing to offer him, and I had so much I needed from him. I didn't know how exactly to interact with him, but I knew that he wanted to redeem me. He was offering to protect and provide for and rescue me. And just like Ruth, I entered a family, a church body that I didn't know beforehand, but one that quickly took me in. And I experienced Chesed love, and I started to look for ways to show that love to others. I bet you know people like that who ooze Chesed love, and I bet those people would be more than willing to tell you about the ultimate family redeemer who wants to rescue you too. If you haven't read the rest of Ruth, spoiler alert, Boaz and Ruth get hitched, and they have a son named Obed, who has a son named Jesse, and Jesse fathered David. Yep, King David. What a kindness of Adonai to offer his Chesed love to a Moabite woman, to send a family redeemer to step in and advocate for her, and then to bless her as she became a part of the bloodline of King David, and then ultimately King Jesus. Chesed love does that. It doesn't look at status or success. It doesn't look at past sin or even future sin. It's a love that says, I'm willing to enter a relationship with you and offer you unlimited mercy, grace, and kindness. And you can't do anything to ruin it because it's not based on you and it's not looking for a way out. The ultimate word picture for Chesed love can be found in Romans 5:6-8. For a while we were still helpless. At the right time, the Messiah died on behalf of ungodly people. Now, it is a rare event when someone gives up his life even for the sake of somebody righteous. Although possibly for a truly good person, one might have the courage to die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in that the Messiah died on our behalf while we were still sinners. So let me ask you again, do you have that Chesed kind of love with anyone in your life? A friendship so deep that there's no way you would bail on them? A sibling that you honor in such a way that they would support and believe you no matter what? What about with the Lord? Have you had the realization that he already loves you with a Chesed kind of love? He's not looking for a way out. He's not waiting for you to screw up so badly that he has a legit reason to ditch you. He already knows the sins you will commit, and he's not scared to offer you his Chesed love.